What's going on, everybody? My name is Jeff Carpenter with Ready Light Media. I'm a portrait and headshot photographer based just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. In this class today, we're going to talk about kind of my workflow with tethering when I'm doing headshots, and we're going to do a little bit of a shooting demo just to show you some of kind of my go-to setups, especially for volume headshots. This class is all about simple headshots, but I took it one step further. We're going to talk about super simple volume headshots, and maybe it's something you can implement into your business. But some of these tricks will pertain to other types of headshot photography as well. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. And first things we're going to talk about is what are volume headshots. Basically, volume headshots are shooting multiple subjects with the same or similar lighting or backdrop in a short period of time in order to maximize profits and increase efficiency. So basically what that means is I'm showing up to a location where a client has hired me, and let's say it's an annual conference. Right now we're not doing a whole lot of these types of sessions because the world's pretty much shut down, but hopefully things will get back to normal soon. And when that happens, I'll be shooting a couple hundred headshots in one day. Problem is that can tend to get a little monotonous. So what we want to do is find a way to, make it still a unique experience for each person while also increase efficiency and maximize profits. So next thing we're going to talk about is booking and scheduling. So when you're booking and scheduling volume headshots, there's a couple things that you want to know, or kind of things to look out for. So the first thing you want to know is, who is your client? When I say this, yes, one company might hire me, but you want to know who your client is. And what I mean by that is, who do I need to talk to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible? Typically, that's going to be the marketing person that's in charge of kind of booking everything. But as long as you know who your specific person that you need to talk to is, that's going to help everything go a lot smoother. You want to be able to be flexible, within reason. You want to try and get everything shot, if it's possible, in one day. You don't want to be coming in, back and forth, unless they're going to pay you properly. Then you can start to, you can maybe come in a couple days, or if you had some stragglers, but make sure you're getting compensated appropriately for that. Be transparent. What I mean by this is you want to make sure that your client knows what they're going to get ahead of time. So making sure that they know what to expect as far as deliverables are concerned, what to expect when you're on location, just things like that will help the whole process go a lot smoother. One thing that helps me, especially with shooting volume headshots, is scheduling individuals in short time blocks. This might be like a 3 to 5 minute block to make sure you get enough time with each person, while also, making sure people aren't eating up too much of your time. Because that will happen. Somebody will come in and they'll try and take 15 minutes out of your time. So having these predetermined blocks also helps. I know I had a session one time where I think I shot 900 headshots in one day. I had a few different stations set up, so I actually had 3 photographers, 3 stations. The problem is we didn't have everything blocked out appropriately. And this is early on in my career before I knew this. So I'm making these mistakes so you guys don't have to. Basically, we had probably a couple hundred people come in the first couple hours. Then we had nothing for 5 hours. And then the rest of the other 700 people tried to get everything in the last 2 hours. And it was just physically impossible to do. So once that happened, I learned my lesson, and I was like, okay, let's go ahead and make sure everything is blocked out appropriately. And that might be something where you talk to, again, your client, who your contact is, and help them, because they might have a better understanding of how you can actually get that scheduled. But as long as you have that, and then, if you have an assistant that can come with you, can kind of make sure you're on track with that, that helps a ton. So really, it's just a lot of planning ahead of time will help make these types of sessions go really, really smooth. All right, so we're talking about we schedule an individual in short blocks. And finally, the big one is always, always, always send a contract. This may seem like pretty standard, obvious stuff, but you want to make sure that you send a contract. So again, that kind of goes back to being transparent. Everybody knows what they're going to expect. A lot of times when you're doing a volume type headshot, you're going to be on location. So there's a couple things that you want to look out for once you get to the location that will definitely help you do this. All right, so the first thing is we want to arrive early, set up, find power if needed. When I'm shooting this type of stuff, I'm using these, battery powered strobes now, so I don't have to necessarily find power. I probably have to find power maybe for my laptop, because it's a little bit older and it doesn't have the, doesn't hold the battery life as well as it can. Tether Tools makes some really great on-site power, so I use that a lot. I just have it clamped to, like, you can't see it right now, but it's clamped to this little table here. So I'd have my laptop on here. I'd have my, D-tap battery attached to that. So if I need it, I can have that. But if you have a plug, just find it. Make sure you bring some tape to tape it down. Again, arrive early, set up, find power. Test your gear. Again, this kind of makes sense, but you want to make sure that you're not running into, especially once you get into that time block where people are like, all right, this is my 10:30, I'm here, it's my time, I got 5 minutes to get this done. You don't want some sort of gear failure. That makes you look really unprofessional. It is just it just throws a wrench in the whole process, because then you get, off track and off schedule. So just make sure that you have your gear tested, and that's whether you have your batteries, you have your tether cables, your computer. Just make sure everything you bring, that it's working, just so you don't run into an issue. Keep fresh batteries on hand. Usually the night before, I will go ahead and charge all my batteries that I need, and that's including my camera batteries as well as my on-site batteries that I might need. Just make sure you have them, have extras with you, just in case you run into an issue where you have a battery die on you or it just kind of craps out altogether. It's just nice to have that backup. Staying hydrated. This is one thing that I kind of learned over the years is you forget to drink water. So I always bring a bottle of water with me. It seems kind of silly, but definitely keeping hydrated will help everything, especially when you're going to be on your feet for multiple hours in a day. You don't want to, pass out or anything. So you want to make sure that you have, you're properly hydrated. I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but you don't want to let anybody take up too much time. But you also don't want anybody to feel rushed either. Like I said before, some people might be extra picky, and they want to take 200 photos in their little 5-minute time block, which technically, yeah, is possible. But you don't want someone to kind of monopolize your time. So you want to make sure that, you want to be respectful to them. But, if they're sitting there being like, you have a picture and they all look exactly the same and they're not, they're still not happy with it. If it's something that you can do to fix it, then yeah, absolutely do everything you can to help remedy that problem. But a lot of times, you'll just get some people that tend to be a little bit picky. Just don't let them take up too much of your time and then eat into someone else's time block. All right, so obviously we are here in the tethering booth, so we want to talk a little bit about tethering. So I tether for basically 99%, if not 100% of the shoots that I do, because I shoot in studio a lot, so I'm tethering all the time. So let's just talk about a little bit of what I do with tethering, maybe why you should if you don't already tether. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about is having your session set up ahead of time. I use Capture One Pro. I also shoot on Panasonic, which is not natively supported with that, so I have to do one extra step. So I have to set up my Lumix tether session and make sure the reference folder is referencing my Capture One session. And then I also have my Capture One session that is specifically for that shoot. But just making sure you have your session set up ahead of time. You don't want to have a client roll up and you're still trying to create your session. It's just not professional. Wireless or wired tethering. I do a little bit of both. It really kind of depends on the situation. So if I'm in my personal studio here, I'm probably going to tether wired, just because I don't have a ton of people, walking around that can possibly, trip over something. That being said, if I'm on location, I'm probably going to shoot with the air direct, and that just eliminates any possibility of, if there's high foot traffic, someone accidentally tripping over it, whether they're knocking over your computer or your camera. Neither one are really a good thing to knock over, or they could fall and hurt themselves, and then you're running into kind of a liability issue. So if I'm on location and I know there's going to be a lot of people there, I will go ahead and shoot with the air direct, and I'll shoot wirelessly. Just to kind of avoid any accidents that could happen. All right, so another thing that's a really big benefit of tethering, especially in a high volume situation like this, is that you can have your clients pick their photos immediately. I used to send galleries. I would send it right away, but then they wouldn't send their images back until, 2 weeks later. And then by that time I've had shoots pile up and then they want their images immediately. And it tends to, just turn into kind of a cluster where everything is just, piling on top of each other. So what I do now all the time, every single time, is I almost kind of make them pick their photo right away. One thing that can help a lot in a situation, in a volume situation is, remember that who's your client I talked about earlier? A lot of times whoever's hiring you will have someone on site to help kind of facilitate things. And a lot of times I will kind of allow them or have them pick help each individual person pick their photo. Because some people just really don't like getting their photo taken and they're not happy with anything. So sometimes they kind of need that little boost of, extra encouragement, telling them like, hey, this is actually a really good photo. And especially if it's for the brand, that person is kind of the representation of that brand. So then they're going to be the ones that are able to be like, hey, this is kind of what we're looking for as a company. It might not be something that you want to use as your Facebook profile, but as the company, that's what they're looking for. So having someone can be like, that can kind of help facilitate that on site is really helpful. But again, having them pick immediately, that just allows me to deliver them a lot quicker, which makes me look better. It allows, them to kind of not have to worry about it. So especially when you're in an instance where you have a lot of different people coming through, let's say even just like 100 people coming through at one time, if you have someone who doesn't pick their photos right away, let's say you have 10 people that don't pick their photo, that project is still looming over your head. I like to have things like done and completed as soon as possible. So that way I don't have to worry about how I'm just like, I delivered 90% of that project, but I've got 10 people that still haven't even told me which one they want. By tethering and having it come up immediately, it allows me to, get everything done a lot quicker. I send stuff to a retoucher and then they can deliver it back a little quicker. And then I deliver my final product a lot quicker, which again, makes me look better. That makes me look more professional. And that brings us to our last point, which it does make you look professional. I know this is kind of maybe a silly thing to think about, but when you have everything like almost instantaneously, you take the photo, it pops up right on a computer right in front of your client. Like a lot of people tend to be impressed that you can do that where you're not having to show them the back of the camera. It just allows things to go smoother. Again, sometimes I'll just bring extra gear I don't use just to look more professional. And this is definitely an instance where I'm using it still, so it actually just helps the whole process. After the shoot, there's a couple things that we're gonna wanna do. So the first thing I do is I'll send my images to a retoucher. You may not wanna do this, but personally for me, this helps a ton and this helps me get the images delivered a lot quicker. So your delivery method should stay the same from shoot to shoot. I use WeTransfer a lot unless it's over 2 gigabytes because I don't have WeTransfer Plus. I'll then switch to Dropbox. But you want to keep it consistent just for your own personal sanity. So the next thing we're going to talk about is delivering your images in a timely manner. In my contract, I have a 2-week turnaround time, but I always deliver my images probably in a week or less. What that does is it just shows my client that they're important to me and that they're getting their images quicker than I said. So it kind of comes back to, under promise, over deliver. I don't love that saying, but in this case, that is pretty much what we're doing. We're telling them, we're setting an expectation, and then we're delivering in a much quicker, turnaround. And another thing you want to do is follow up with your client after the final images have been delivered. You want to just make sure that they're happy with everything. It's just a good idea to kind of maintain an open relationship with your client because they might forget that, we actually needed you for something else. So then that just kind of keeps you top of mind to them. And it's just good business practice to stay in touch with your clients because then they might hire you again later and that's what we want. All right, so that kind of concludes just some little tips and tricks, on the presentation side. What I want to do is I want to jump into shooting an actual live demo. So let's go ahead and do that and I'll show you kind of my go-to setup for a lot of the volume headshots that I shoot. All right, so now that we've gone through the PowerPoint presentation, I've got Cheryl here in my studio to help me out. So we're gonna just show you kind of my go-to setup for a lot of my corporate or volume headshots. And that's gonna be a 3-light setup. I've got 2 lights kind of evenly spaced at an angle. There's 2 strip boxes in the front, and then I've got a 5-foot octa behind Cheryl just as the background light. So right now we're creating a white background. So what I want to do is to get the exposure of the background first. So I'm going to turn off my 2 key lights. And what I want to do is I want to get the exposure as low as possible, or low as possible while still being pure white. So right now, let's go ahead and turn the power all the way up. We know it's going to be, that'll get us to pure white. So let's just go ahead and turn it all the way up. Problem we're going to run into with this situation is that we're starting to we don't have any of these front lights on, but we're getting exposure on her face because it's bouncing off probably the diffusion fabric of these lights. It's bouncing off all the white walls in here, and we're losing a lot of definition in her hair. So what I want to do is I want to get that power to be the lowest possible power I can, while also not, you know, overexposing her hair. So let's go ahead and bring that back down. I think it's probably right around there. So right now we're going to get it a little bit lower. That's good. Let's see if we can come down one more stop. And again, the reason why we want it to be the lowest power while still being pure white, obviously we'll get the pure white background there, but we're also going to retain a lot of that definition, especially in like blonde hair like this. So let's just hover over and make sure we're good. So let's go up another stop, because I could tell, as long as it says 255 across the board, like in capture 1 here, that's good to go. We know that's pure white. So let's just double check this, make sure. That's good. All right, so we're at basically the lowest power, we're still getting pure white. Now we can go ahead and bring in these key lights. And this first look is going to be pretty much flat light, where in this kind of situation, that's kind of what we want to go for, because in a, you know, they just need the image to look like them, but it's also a nice professional, like crisp image as well. So both of these are going to be at the same power for this first look. And then we'll go ahead and start kind of adjusting the power a little bit to kind of give the, you know, image a little bit more contrast. So let's go ahead and take this first one. And we now have a nice flat, you know, properly exposed image with a pure white background, which is great for this. So let's say we want to have a little contrast. Let's angle you this way. So we'll angle her that way. And let's make this light to the right here more the key light. So let's go ahead and let's bring the energy of that one up one stop. And let's bring this light over here. Let's bring that down. Let's bring that down a stop. So now what that's going to do is we're going to have more exposure on this side, whereas this is kind of act as more of like a fill. And we're starting to kind of see that where her face is starting to get a little definition. I can even bring this one down a little further and really kind of start to create more shadow on the right side of her face because I'm not exposing it quite as much. So let's go ahead and flip it around. Let's go ahead and keep her in the same spot and just basically swap these powers. I'm going to have this one at 8 and this one at 5 now. And that's going to just shape her face a little bit differently from there as well. So let's go ahead and bring this one up 3 stops. And let's bring this one down 3 stops. So what that's going to do is now this is going to act as the key light here because that's kind of the more powerful one. And then this one's going to act as fill over here. And if you wanted to really, really take it to an extreme, you can also let's just turn this one off. Now, when I turn that one off, let's take the shot and see what happens. You might need to up the exposure on this one a little bit because you're losing a good bit of light from this light over here. So it's not bad actually. So we've got basically now we've got it down to a 2 light setup. So we've got this one on, this one's off completely, and then we've got the background light. So that's one way that you can kind of shape the light just by turning off or adjusting powers pretty quickly. That way you don't have to move lights around based on the person and their preference of like what's their good side or their bad side. So in addition to this, what we can do also is I've got this V flat over here, and I can go ahead and throw this and lean it right up against this background light. And what this is going to do, you can probably see that from the, or if I take kind of a pulled back version of the shot, what we have now is basically we've got 2 strips lights on either side and almost a hair light up top. And then we're going to turn into a pure black background. One issue with this now is we're covering up about 80% of that light. So what am I have to do with that background light? I had to up the power up. So let's go ahead and turn that up. Let's bring it up 2 stops. And let's just to show you what this is going to do, let's go ahead and turn the key lights off. So I've already got this one over here off. Let's turn this one off as well. And let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Now we have just a black background and we've got nice rim light wrapping around here. So now if we bring these lights back in, let's go ahead and turn this one on. And let's bring this one on as well so we get a little bit of fill. So what we're gonna have here now is a nice crisp black background, and we have some rim lights, and we have a proper exposure on her face. So that's just one way. All I did was throw a V-flat in there. You'll also notice I have this other V-flat right here. It's kind of like a tabletop. And that's just kind of adding a little bit of fill up underneath her nose and chin. That's completely, preference. You don't have to do that. I just happen to kind of like doing that. And then we can take a look at this other camera over here just to give you an idea of what the, kind of how close she is to the background. One thing you might notice, and it's starting to kind of creep in on the edges of this shot, is a little bit of haze around the edges. And that is because my lens, the crop, is just a little too close to the edge. So as I zoom out on that, I've still got a little bit of it on the corner. You're gonna start to have a little bit more of that. Whereas if let's take it off tripod here and come in a little bit. The further in I come with that is the less I'm gonna get of that haze. Whereas if I came here, you're gonna start getting, and that's just basically the light and your optics from your lens kind of interacting with each other. If you have it too close to where light shining directly into it, you're gonna get that haze. So if you ever run into that issue, just either step a little bit closer or zoom in a little bit, and that'll remedy that situation. One thing I do want to talk about really quickly before we wrap up is, I talked about it a little bit in the presentation part, but wired versus wireless tethering. So right now I'm in my studio. It's just the 2 of us here, so I'm tethering wired. And one benefit of like tethering with a direct wired connection is you're going to have a lot faster of a raw transfer. The Air Direct does transfer raws, but we have to understand that you're transferring a very large file magically through the air to a computer. It's not going to be as fast as a wired transfer. Now the benefit of having it wireless is I'm remarkably clumsy, so I tend to trip over stuff all the time. So having the ability to not have to worry about that at all is a big, big advantage. So when I'm shooting on location in an environment where there's a lot of foot traffic, I will shoot wireless. So there's a time and a place for both. Right now, I'm shooting wired, and then I've got the kind of the Arca plate that's got the tether block, so I can yank this and nothing's gonna happen. So that's kind of a nice advantage of that as well. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be sticking around for some questions if you guys have any questions about the setup or just really anything photo related whatsoever or tethering related. But let's jump into that, and I'll see you there.